By taking my footage from September 1st and September 17th and stopping it, putting it in still frames next to each other, personally, I got a better appreciation for the changes, or lack of changes, depending on how you want to look at it. I mentioned the yellow flower tarweed before because it is a native and it has a smell that puts off a lot of animals, and the goats don't eat it, or at least they avoid it a little bit. But under closer inspection, there's definitely some missing. Why? Why do the goats eventually eat some of it? Is it because they were there long enough that they finally decided, well, I guess if I have to? I don't know. Exactly how much did they eat? How much did they leave? I can only give you the visuals. I didn't do a before and after count. The other plant that is noticeable is the dark one in the distance. That's the curly dock. Curly dock is invasive. Curly dock invades riparian areas. You see that it's kind of on the line, which is where a channel of water, well, that's where a channel of water should be, but the water always gets cut off, redirected, I should say, to agriculture, irrigation, the city itself, urban areas using up the water to the point that hardly any makes it to this point, and it's certainly dry, way before it should be, which is actually particularly bad news because what little water there is in the soil, the curly dock soaks up for itself, depriving any native plants of being able to get to that water, or at least highly competing against them. Why did the goats not eat the curly dock? Most of the results, when I looked it up, say that curly dock is toxic to livestock, including goats. So that is not the correct animal to try and get rid of curly dock. Now, when you look at the fact that this field is covered in yellow still, the look of the annual invasive grasses that turn into fire fuel, personally, the cost isn't worth the gain to me when you see that there's still plenty of that fire fuel there, and there's still plenty of the invasive plants there. Did they get rid of some of the invasive fire fuel? Yeah. Well, sort of. It's shorter and shredded. They also got rid of a lot of the native plants. They left a fair amount of the yellow flower tarweed, but that's just one plant. The rest of the native plants wiped out, which is only going to intensify the problem of the curly dock because there's no competitor left. The goats left the bad guys and wiped out the good guys. So next year, the curly dock will probably have an even stronger hold. The annual grasses will definitely come back. I guarantee it. They do every year. They come back even stronger. The yellow flower tarweed was reduced. It wasn't wiped out, but it was reduced. So you got to ask yourself, are the goals that have been set forth being accomplished when you're wiping out at least as many natives as invasives, if not more? It's also important to consider the erosion and the soil compaction. As you're driving away from the area, looking at the steeper part here where the goats climbed up, it's obvious to me that the goats were there. You can see the horizontal lines, and to my eye, I've been looking at this long enough, this is just what livestock grazing looks like. Exposed ground in various stages of eroding, and some of the bigger rocks underneath are now exposed. Plants and soil that might have helped keep those in place have been compromised. This is going to just continue to be an erosion problem to where even those big rocks are going to start crumbling down, and then the exposed soil underneath will then start to go away as well. This is not a good plan. And finally, I will follow up on the comparison to mowing. Some areas the city mows or weed whacks, some areas it grazes, some areas get treatment of all of them. Here I pulled over to give a close-up of an area that gets mowed as opposed to grazed. It's amazingly similar. recall this footage from the previous video where the goats grazed. I would say, if anything, the mowing is more level across the field in terms of getting it all the same length, but they both leave it on the ground, and both techniques require you to keep doing it over and over and over and over again.